We did a rough series with 3 sections.
Okay.
And
you're very organized. I'm impressed.
No, we're incredibly stressed.
Okay.
Tense is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And everything is just loose and easy. So.
Okay.
All right. So we divvied it up into 3 parts.
Okay.
So we're going to talk your writing, Monkeybrain,
and the duo.
And then we have a standard set of questions that we ask everyone, kind of in this vein of Inside the Actors Studio.
Yeah.
But no cursing.
I'm happy to say my favorite.
No cursing, we can't.
No,
well, I don't know if we.
No, they're not going to ask them what's your favorite curse.
Yeah, we're not going to ask what your favorite curse word is.
got it.
We'll just shout it out at the end.
I was worried I was going to
We won't ask. You guys can just do
watch my
it.
language.
No, you.
I can curse.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, all good. All right. Good?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
All right. Crime Spree on Comics, right from the Fablestown Kill Shakespeare Bar with Chris and Allison's. Part 1. Chris's writing. So basically, with all the different genres that you've dabbled into, tell us a little bit about your influences, please.
Oh, God. Everything I've ever read or seen.
Can you narrow it down?
Okay. Well, it depends. Like, I was a voracious reader as a kid and voracious consumer of crappy cartoons and old monster movies and things. I guess it's the ones that have stuck with me the longest. And it depends really on whatever is obsessing me at the moment as to what I point to as my biggest influences. The ones that constantly come up are like Michael Moorcock, Philip Jose Farmer, Alan Moore. There's probably every once in a while I'll forget that I have not mentioned one, and for a long time I forgot to mention Anne McCaffrey. Anne McCaffrey is probably a huge influence on me.
She just passed away not so long ago.
Yeah. But like I was obsessed with her books in middle school, but then I didn't read them again later, so I forgot to mention for a long time. Kim Newman, Ketch Baker. I like Grant Morrison stuff. Kurt Busiek was a huge influence.
Absolutely.
That guy's fantastic. Matt Wagner. Matt Wagner was my personal Jesus when I was 18. And now I'm in his book club and I go to his house.
That's awesome.
And it's kind of crazy. And every once in a while I have to tell him like how weird it is that because I wear, the clothes I wear are because his character Kevin Matchstick in Mage, what that character wore defines how I dress now as a 42-year-old man. I'm essentially cosplaying Kevin Matchstick always, which is weird because Matt Wagner is Kevin Matchstick. That's what he looks like.
For those of us at the table that may not have read Mage, tell us a little bit about Kevin Matchstick.
Oh, well, Mage was a modern day, it's mythic fiction. It's a modern day reimagining of King Arthur with just a regular guy who ends up inheriting the power. I don't want to spoil the end, but basically there's a magic baseball bat and there's little monsters, but it was what was called for a long time urban fantasy before urban fantasy became a shorthand for paranormal romance. But that kind of Charles DeLint kind of like things in the margins of cities. And I discovered it as a senior in high school, I think. Junior in high school. It was right towards the end of it. I became obsessed with it. And it, like, literally, it obsessed me for several years. And I read the epigrams in Mage were quotes from Hamlet. So I read Hamlet like 10 times in my senior year in high school just to figure out what the epigrams meant.
Okay.
I first read Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell because Matt had mentioned in interviews that was something that influenced him. It was really like a big part of why I became the person I became, and now I'm in his book club.
That's awesome.
So.
And do you have the T-shirt?
Oh yeah.
What's the T-shirt?
It's essentially like Captain Marvel. It's a white lightning bolt on a black T-shirt.
It looks kind of like this.
Which I gave to her on our 10th wedding anniversary.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
Now hold hands.
No.
Excellent. As we just talked about in the previous panel, we mentioned Starborn. So that's actually the first time that we became aware of your work. We discovered your work on Starborn. Super fun book. Was that always meant to be a limited series?
Well, in modern American mainstream comics, which take it to mean like superhero comics published by American companies, everything's limited. I mean, entropy always sets in. Everything is going to end and be canceled. So I think the idea was originally that it was going to be an ongoing, but the sales being what they were, they told me, I think around issue 6, like, you got 12. So I planned it out kind of modularly, so that, like, here's the beginning, bunch of stuff, and then there's kind of an end. And so we were able to get to an end, and make it more or less a cohesive story.
So I think I picked up the last issue, and I didn't know it was the last issue.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, so I was reading from home, and I'm like, and then he flies up into space, and it's a big happy planet, so to speak. And then I tweeted you, little meta there, and I was like, "This is awesome!" And I was super looking forward to the next issue. And you replied, and I said, "Oh wait, I was looking forward to the next issue, but damn it." And you replied, and you said, "Thank you." What? I'm like, now there's going to be a next issue, and he thinks I'm a dope.
No.
But that was a true story.
He's just a little slow sometimes.
Yeah. Damn it. What? Explain to us how the experience or the feel or the vibe of working for a smaller studio, like I believe that was Boom.
Boom, yeah.
As compared to a larger publisher like the Big Two.
Well, yeah. Ultimately, so I did a fair amount of work for Boom. I've done some work for IDW. I'm currently doing a bunch of work for Dynamite.
Oni.
And Oni's, I feel like it's different because that's my book.
Yeah.
Like I don't count that one because I'm thinking more in terms of like books I've been hired to write as opposed to. I'm also doing a book with Oni.
Okay.
But the real difference is that at the smaller outfits, you can talk to the person that's making the decisions. I mean, because it's a smaller corporate structure, so I can call up the head of Boom or Dynamite or IDW for that matter, and if we make decisions about the way a story is going to go, that's the way the story is going to go. I don't have any personal experience working at Marvel, but at DC. Well, my instinct is to say it's a clusterfuck, but that might as well. It's a clusterfuck because no one really makes decisions. Decisions are made, and then they can be immediately rescinded by someone higher up. Or long-term plans can be scuttled in the blink of an eye because the head of the company has had some epiphany that he wants to do something.
But I don't think that's because they're bigger companies. I think it's just the way that that company is
It's
run.
also a broken company. Yeah. That's
I don't
true.
think it's it's inherently because it's Time Warner. I think it's because it's just inherently broken process.
Yeah, it's because
it's the culture of brokenness.
Yeah, it's because Dan DiDio.
Let's say broken again.
Dan DiDio screws stuff up. So yeah, that's the big difference.
So with the DC debacle that's going on, as an outsider to comics myself, do you think it's something where they promote a lot of very big picture creative types who don't have, they kind of like live by their muse that, okay, well now we're going to do this. No. Okay.
Because what runs the show these days at DC is people refer to it as editorial interference, which is really not adequate because the editors aren't the ones interfering. It's executive interference.
Okay.
Because the editors and the writers and the artists will have ideas and plans and work things out, and in many cases the editors are often painted as the villains, but my experience with editors at both Vertigo and at DC was all really positive. I mean, it was more a positive collaborative experience. Executives will come in and screw it up at the last minute.
Because basically, it's like they have an outline and it's approved and everybody's approved it. The executives all the way up, and then 3 months later, after a number of scripts have been written, the people are like, "Oh, well, wouldn't it be cool if we did this?" And then make that decision, and that trickles down into people having to rewrite things and then be behind immediately. Okay. So that is constantly occurring, which is why you see a number of people finally just quitting because it's at a certain point it's not worth living like that. It's like somebody that has gone back on their word time and time again. I mean, can you imagine like you'd be giving a green light on a project, and then like
3 months into the
project, they're
told
like,
to start
never
over.
mind, start over, have it all be your responsibility, and then that continue to happen over and over and over again.
Because on the one hand, you're then essentially working for free for however much, because you've already been paid for that work.
Right.
But part of the provision is that you also have to do revisions. But throwing out your script and starting over isn't really a revision. And there was one case, I don't want to name the prick, I don't want to call him out, but there was one writer who'd worked there for a long time who had written like a year ahead on his book, all editorially approved. And then they made a decision, I say they, it's the DO, made a decision to change something and essentially told him you have to start over. And having already been paid, you're then doing months worth of work for free. And in some cases, it's like the story idea is a crappy story idea. So then you're going to be, your name is on it too, not this executive's name.
Right.
So you're going to be blamed for whatever crappy story comes out. So that's why many people have quit.
Right.
And it's and I want to. This is a positive interview and everything. But as a fanboy first, I mean it sucks. You know, it's because there are characters I grew up reading. These are the books that I like to read. And when you go, when you read a product or watch a product or do whatever, where the break is.
Yep.
And you're like, that's not what I wanted. That's not my $4.
Yep.
You know, so it's tough to be on both ends of the creative piece, producing, you know, and consuming. Oftentimes.
Tell Brad to be quiet. Brad, we're doing an interview. Be quieter.
Oh, sorry, are we recording?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dovetailing right in there. How did it feel to you as both a creator and a fan to wrap up something like Spider-Man? Or
Superman. That's it. No. Dude, in the second appearance of Spider-Man.
I wrote Spider-Man.
No, in the second appearance of Spider-Man, or third, Dr. Octopus calls him Superman. So there's a long and proud tradition of confusing those two characters.
I mean, more caffeine, more sleep.
Yeah.
No.
I think it'll be fun.
It was awesome, and it was something that I do not regret for a second, and that I will never do again. So, like, I don't think I've ever mentioned this analogy in an interview, but the DC universe, that's my native culture. Like, that's where I grew up.
Yep.
That's where my allegiances lie, and it's been difficult for me for the last year or two to figure out, like, where I stand, you know, because still those characters mean a lot to me, and I have a boundless respect for the people that worked on those books forever and edited them forever, and I have no allegiance or affinity with what's happening there now. And I realize the most apt analogy is that I am like a Cuban expatriate perched in Miami waiting for Castro to die. You know, the DC bullet is my flag. I don't recognize the sovereignty of the new DC bullet, and I'm hoping someday, as a fan, just to get my country back. Yeah,
It's very, very, very well put. Yeah, I see that. So that being the case, as a comics fan, what are you reading right now?
Let's see. What am I reading right now? I always get flushed with this question because I can only think of
You've
three
been
things.
rereading a lot of old Superman.
Oh, I've been rereading a lot of old Superman. I've been revisiting the Julius Schwartz era Superman, the Denny O'Neil, Elliot S. Maggin, Carrie Bates. But in terms of new stuff, I love Michael Fife's Copra, which is published in a limited edition of 500 print run per issue, but he's self-publishing it monthly. He sells it himself through his Etsy store, and it's essentially his love letter to the John Ostrander Suicide Squad, but also the comics of Steve Ditko and a bunch of other things, and it's amazing. He's kind of from the New York kind of art comic scene, doing this big widescreen superhero story, and it's fantastic. So that's always the one I mention. I love anything that Brandon Graham does. Atomic Robo, of course, is always top of my list. I love Bandette, which is being done by
Oh yeah,
Paul Tobin and Carl Cooper. All of my books I do. I love Masks and Monsters. Yeah.
Excellent. let's just go right into Monkeybrain then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and maybe we've already answered this question previously, but what was the impetus to starting your own publishing house, and that being the case, digital in particular?
I guess I get to answer that question.
Well, I can't even want to chime in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You answer it and I'll chime in
You're
with color commentary.
paying money.
Because I do a lot better with the color commentary.
Yes, that's true.
With your straight man.
Correcting me, yes. So,
This whole thing is incredibly familiar.
we switched roles the other day on an interview, and it was awkward for both of us. So she was in the lead, and I was offering commentary.
And then you just basically just made a summary of like what I had just said, but like way more coherently.
Short and jokey. Monkeybrain was originally conceived. It had previously been a small press print operation, doing prose, trade paperbacks, things like that. A couple, like an art book and some encyclopedias. We follow some encyclopedias, like you do. But as in its incarnation as a comics imprint, it was originally conceived as a lifeboat, because we saw, on the one hand, that my long-term career goals didn't include working at DC. That was not in the cards, because either they would fire me or I would quit. And it turns out both kind of happened. But also the comics market is a little bit precarious, and these big corporate concerns that have giant infrastructures and huge overheads with tons of people working on salary could be snuffed out in an instant if their corporate overlords decided that it wasn't worth the expense of doing anymore. Both DC and now Marvel are owned by two giant multimedia, multinational entertainment corporations that spend more on snacks than either of those two companies make selling comics. Mm-hmm. And they could just decide tomorrow it's not worth employing all these people on the masthead to sell 20,000 copies of this comic, whatever the case may be.
We could just make the movies.
Yeah. Or license it out,
Yeah,
whatever the case may be. So, Monkeybrain Comics was originally conceived as a place for me to do my comics and sell them and get them in front of people. And digital was the way to go, because having done small press print stuff, we knew that there was lots of overhead, lots of money's involved. We had, as I now tell it, we had lost several shirts doing that, and we didn't want to lose any more shirts. We like the shirts we have. And so digital was a way where the only investment would be the time involved in making the thing. And then Allison is the brains behind the operation, and so spent the better part of a year figuring out how to structure it so that the artist could get paid quickly, and kind of keep the trains moving on time. Not in like a Mussolini way, but like in a positive, happy Disneyland way.
I think I'm a little bit more like Mussolini.
You think so?
Actually.
Yeah.
You favor the brown shirt.
Yeah.
Oh.
Brown's a good color. I like it.
And and once we spent a long time like figuring out how we would do it and talking to the different digital distribution outfits and placing all of our money on Comixology as the ones that were going to come out on top.
Right.
We thought, and they did. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Once we had done that, we realized that we'd created a structure that we could do for anybody's comics, not just for mine. Because originally it was going to be just a comic I made, or comics I made. And having created it, we were like, we can open the doors to friends of ours and people whose work we really like and want to see more of. And then that's how it happened. And the plan was to do things, serialize them digitally, cheaply, with the money almost all the money going to the creators as quickly as possible. And then once enough issues have been produced, do a print edition somewhere. But
do that with a publisher that's already established with sales people and that know how to get the books into stores and
wants to spend the money to print the thing.
Relationship with retailers and wants to upfront the money and whatnot. So.
And when I saw the print news, that I kind of did one of these. I'm like, that's pretty cool, because it seems like there's the traditional publishers trying to figure out how to get to the internet.
Yeah.
And then we have what seems to be a very successful digital outfit reaching back the other way.
Yeah.
You know, we're on our iPhones all day long. We have, you know, the internet at home, this and that. But I'm a paper reading guy. You know, I have my Kindle. You know, I've looked at Monkeybrain online, but I like going to the comic shop. I like on Wednesdays. They have my pull box, and I buy physical copies. Yeah. So that's something that I find very appealing, is the paper piece. Excuse me. So the paper was part of the plan from the start?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Because it really doesn't work. I don't think that anything works in isolation anyway. Because I think that the digital... I think that printing single issues in some cases, especially with smaller books, can cannibalize your print audience. So because they're having to be priced so high, so you know, you're having to pay like, you know, $3-4 for a floppy comic, but like, you know,
20 pages,
which is why a lot of people wait to buy the trade, right? Because they want the physical object, but they don't want to pay. They don't want to but they don't want to have to figure out how to store the floppies, and
or they just want the experience of reading it all together,
exactly.
Or they prefer to have something that's spine.
So there's like you know, like all these reasons why people don't buy single issues, and then that basically turns into books being canceled, because the companies are kind of basing, like, if they're going to continue doing a series based on the floppy sales, the
single issue. Yeah.
So what this whole model does is that you basically put the issues out digitally, where you have no overhead cost except for the work and the time to make the thing, and people like have access to that all around the world. So there's access. It's at a low price point because you can afford to make it a low price point because you're not having to recoup printing costs. And so people that might not have tried something that, you know, because they didn't know who was doing it, they didn't know who the artist was or the writer was, but it looks kind of interesting. But, you know, maybe they wouldn't have picked it up at $3. But at 99 cents, it's very easy to psychologically say, well, hell, it's just 99 cents. You might as well give it a try.
But then if they want to just wait for the trade, no one is hurt by it.
Right.
Because most of us are doing these books just because we want to do them. There's not enough money generated by the digital sales yet to like make it worth everybody's time yet. But if that's part of it, and then the trades are part of it, and then they continue to sell indefinitely because they never go to print, they never go to stock.
I suppose so.
They're always there. It means that the creators can continue to do the book for as long as they want to. Whereas, like with any print operation, you reach a point of diminishing returns where if the sales dip below a certain level, it's no longer worth what it costs to print.
Right.
Whereas we don't have that threshold. There is no cancellation threshold with Monkeybrain. It's just as long as they want to keep doing it, we'll keep publishing it.
And the sales of the like, you know, say you've like we put out like, you know, 5 issues or 6 issues of Edison Rex. The sales of number 1 are never over.
Right.
Because it's always there. It sells every month. So you cannot count like what the initial sales from month 1 of the issue number 1 is not all your sales. It's just the beginning.
It's the first month sales.
It's a very different.
It's a completely different paradigm.
It's a completely different model.
Yeah.
And in fact, I guess we're not allowed, because of the terms of our deal with Comixology, to discuss specific numbers. But we can say that, like, I guess it was last month, there was not a new issue of Edison Rex out. But cumulatively, more individual issues of Edison Rex were sold than in the previous month. Because more people are finding it as it goes on.
Right.
So we sold more copies of Edison Rex, of those 5 issues.
Even without a new issue.
In a month without a new issue than we had in the previous month where a new issue came out.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So do you think because you always have the number 1 issue available, it's going to make it a lot easier for new readers to jump in? Because now you go to your comic shop and you stand in front of that wall, you're like, where do I start? And everything's at 17 or 15 or 304. And
Yeah, 304 was a hell of an issue.
Well, right.
Yeah,
but
I'll tell you what.
But there's not just number 1. They're all there, right there.
Well, you could always start at the beginning.
But yeah, it's easy to start at the beginning, and you don't have to flip through the long box and hope that maybe it's there.
Yeah. That being the case, Monkeybrain it seems to have gotten a ton of great press so far. There's more talent being added to the line. How does that feel to have to be able to wave your banner so high,
awesome,
which is so close to the start of the whole endeavor?
Awesome.
It was very surprising. I didn't think it would be this fast.
Yeah.
But yay.
Yeah.
We figured it would work eventually, but we thought that we would have to do a lot more
brand building.
Yeah, just kind of be in the bushes to get the name out, and just for people to know what we were doing. And the reception was so positive and immediate and continued to grow that by the end of the year, I mean, we launched our first titles first week of July. By the end of the year, our titles would show up on the year's best list and things like that. And what was fascinating to me is no one ever had to explain what Monkeybrain was. They would say, like, this bandette from Monkeybrain is fantastic, it's one of the great books, or I love Mask of Monsters, or Amelia Cole is fantastic. And they never had to explain what it was.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool.
That says a lot.
Or people just talking, like, you do those year-end wrap-ups, like what you thought was cool about like last year or whatever.
They just say
and people we
Monkeybrain.
don't even know we're talking about us. And that's like,
Yeah, it feels good.
feels good.
Do you see, like, with the success of Monkeybrain, Thrillbent as well? I mean, is this a model that we're going to see more of?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think so, and I think that existing publishers are probably looking at us a lot and seeing kind of how we flesh out and whatnot. I do think that we kind of get a little bit more goodwill just because of kind of our philosophy on lots of things, as far as like
More as opposed to other publishers, not Thrillbent. But,
No, yeah. As far as but I think that what's different about us than Thrillbent is that, like, I think Mark is trying to do.
There's experimentation in form
and story, storytelling, and like exploring the digital medium as a thing, and not necessarily about creating a conduit for creators to have a new way to monetize.
We've ended up in much the same place, but we came at it from two different ends. Because we came at it from how do we make use of existing digital distribution mechanisms and whatnot to get creator-owned comics out. Mark came at it from the direction of what cool things can we do with this as a medium.
Right.
And we've kind of ended up in much the same place. But I think we're going to continue to see experimentations like what Brian K. Vaughan and Martin launched just last week.
I need to see this book. I haven't seen it yet.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's called Private Eye.
Yes.
Private Eye, and
Marcos Martin is an amazing artist.
It's a great looking book. I wish the line weights and the letters were a little bit heavier, but that's just me. But yeah, I think we'll see more of that kind of stuff.
And I think we call Comicsology Submit, that like has like opened up the door for people as well, for them to kind of get their work out there. And I think that we're definitely, publishing in general has been in a state of transition for the last 10 years, I'd say. Has it been that long?
Well, you could make the broader argument it's been in transition since the end of World War II.
Okay,
but if we focused a little,
let's focus more on digital distribution.
Yeah.
The revolution never ends, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I think that people are going to come up with things that that we haven't even conceived of yet. Our goal is to basically try to have a positive reading experience, whether you're reading the books on your phone, on your tablet, or on the printed page. That's kind of
or computer or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was largely motivated. I'll digress very briefly, but it was my philosophy on it was motivated by reading an essay that Bill Watterson had written in one of the collections of Calvin and Hobbes about the way he approached his Sunday strips, and that there was the preferred form, but then there were other ways that those panels could be rearranged or even truncated in other papers where you would still get a positive reading experience. So if they decided not to use the big banner but just the smaller panels, or if they decided to rearrange them or stack them in a different way, he was writing and drawing his strips in a way that could be read and enjoyed in all those different permutations. And in much the same way, like we've approached the way that we're doing on the creative end, comics that can be read and enjoyed on a phone or on a tablet, or as you say, in print, or not at all, I guess.
Then you're not really enjoying it.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit more about you guys.
Okay.
Wait, like we haven't already? No.
I'm like, can we talk more about me, please?
Like many of the folks that we've interviewed for Crime Spree magazine, you guys are incredibly active on social media. What are your views on social media? How has it impacted your lives/careers? Sub-question A, just how much do you guys have? How much fun do you guys have drunk tweeting the movies? And sub-question B, where do you think Bill and Ted have traveled to since we last saw them at the Circle K?
Oh, that's a good question.
Wait, what was the question?
The ones I was talking about Bill and Ted the other day.
Yeah. Which is funny because...
No, I'm making... Never mind.
Making fun of me?
No. Yes. I'm always making fun of you. That's just like the whole
Twitter is
point.
great. Twitter is the future we were promised.
Except for there's no jetpacks on Twitter.
Man, screw jetpacks. As I was saying, like, my Apple TV is far and away better than any jetpack could be.
Great.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I was a fairly late adopter. I say fairly late. I first got on Twitter 2006 or something because of Just Call.
But that was only a year after Twitter's inception. Twitter just celebrated its 7th anniversary.
Yeah, so I got in like a
pretty
year in or so.
But comparatively, you're pretty.
You weren't there on opening day.
Right. Well, because I had lots of friends in New York who got on Twitter immediately, and in that first year, all I saw it being used for was, "Hey, I'm at this bar. Let's meet and have drinks."
Yep.
And it was only used for kind of like geotagging things, like where am I, what am I doing, and I would look at things that friends of mine that were on Twitter talked about, and I was like, this is boring. And I think Allison got on board before I did, and she finally browbeat me into doing it, and now it's just invaluable. It's for one thing, just in terms of entertaining ourselves, being able to communicate with our friends. When we lived down in Portland, we moved there last June. But while we were in Texas, our social circle was much more diffuse. It was spread out all over the country. We would only see our friends a few times a year at conventions. But we could keep up with what Mitch Gratz was, his travails with his damn cat, on Twitter. It also, we started seeing its use in a much more kind of high-minded societal way in crises. Like in 2011, our last summer in Texas, the whole damn place caught fire at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
And it was A, terrifying, but B, like on Twitter was basically the mechanism that people were using to report fires. It was like, I just saw a wildfire. Basically, it was so dry and windy that wildfires started all in town. And people were reporting wildfires on Twitter on like highway medians or like a vacant lot next to a grocery store or things like that. And it was this immediate weird kind of feedback loop. And it also meant that me being paranoid, obsessive compulsive, it's all I did for 3 days was watch the police band thing that the fire department had in Twitter as I publicly melted down about like, holy crap, my whole neighborhood is on fire. And then we moved to Portland where that doesn't happen.
Yeah, even better.
Yeah, but I think it's great. And in terms of drunk tweeting the films, that started with for a long time, Allison and I would, for fun, watch movies of questionable quality. Or old bad TV shows and things like that. And one day we were watching Xanadu, and we were lazy, and we were on opposite sides of our living room, and had been drinking, and just started tweeting at each other, like rather than talking. I wanted to listen.
Yeah.
To Olivia Newton-John sing. So instead, we were doing talking to each other on Twitter as we moving on, and then people were like paying attention and answering, and then we were like, oh, we could just like invite our friends to do this with us, and we did it on average about once a month until we left Texas, and then we've been in a tiny apartment for 9 months, and we've only finally just started up again with Buck Rogers in the 25th Century,
which was so much fun to follow along with.
Did you join in?
We go to bed at about 8:30.
Oh, I apologize.
No, it's actually we're the saddest people that we know because we don't go to bed early to punish ourselves, but we can't stay awake. But when you announced that Buck Rogers was going to be the next piece, I had just watched it on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
like 6 months prior.
I love that show.
It's there. I run into the same thing where I watched it when I was 10. Let's watch it now. How come it's not the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's Mel Blanc, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
So.
I want to get up to the casino episode because the casino one is like I think the second story. So encapsulates that Buck Rogers is better at everything than anyone in the future. He will sit down in a game he's never played before and beat everybody.
I think it was in the pilot episode when he teaches everyone how to get down.
Yeah. Yep.
And they all dance with glow balls.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you got to move your hips. And
yep.
It's awful.
He saves the future.
Yeah, through funk is really what it was.
So you moved from Austin to Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from everything starting on fire in Austin,
yeah.
What was the impetus for you moving to the Northeast?
West. So as I said, like our social circle was fairly diffuse. So we had a few friends in Texas, but like Texas is so spread out that like it was an hour drive, round trip to visit friends of ours who lived in town. I mean, it was insane. And having been in comics professionally for a few years. The vast majority of everyone that we've become friends with lived in Portland. Not absolutely everybody, but the vast majority. I think there's a couple in Atlanta, there's a couple in Minnesota, a couple in LA, and virtually everybody else is in Portland. A few people in New York.
Yeah.
But like really, like when you do that thing where we go to conventions, we would scan the guest list to see who do we get to hang out with at this convention. 75% of those people that we'd be excited to see lived in Portland. And we're like, well, A, it doesn't catch on fire there, it rains. It's so you can walk around in. They have great schools, it has zoos and museums, but also like it's comic book nirvana. It's crazy. It sometimes floors me that like when I was a kid, I don't think I could have conceived of such a place. It's a great livable city that has cool stuff, lots of bookstores, lots of bars, and I can just hang out with formative influences. Kurt Busiek calls up and says, hey, you want to get lunch? I'm like, yeah, that would be great. Would love to have lunch with you.
Yeah.
We run into people at the store, or if you want to go to someone's signing. I mean, really, it's just you pick. Do you want to go to one of 4 or 5 fantastic things happening this week or not? It's cool.
Our wrap-up questions, please. When did you finally say, yeah, I'm going to write stuff for a living and it will be awesome?
When I was 8. It just took a while. Between the idea and the execution, there was a gulf of about 30 years. But yeah, about the age of 8.
Excellent.
But I didn't actually make a single dime writing anything until I was 34.
Did you? Was that money? What? We had money?
34 was when I
made
sold
money?
a single dime. I didn't say a lot. A dime.
Was it 34?
I was 34.
Okay. I get
33, 34.
so.
Yeah. Just roll with it.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
What was your favorite moment in comics writing? The moment that when you read it on the page, you smiled and said, that was so cool.
I wrote Superman for 8 months. Like I reread my Superman run for fun. I'm like, yeah, I wrote that. Like that's the thing that happened. Yep.
What was the moment that made you say, writing books is amazing?
I don't know that one did. The word writing books is really hard because writing comics, I invest. There's a lot of time thinking about it, but the physical act of writing the thing, a few days, a week at the outside, and then somebody else draws it. Novels is even a short one or a light one is an investment of weeks and months and long time and lots of hours, and having spreadsheets that track how many words a day I'm typing so I can hit a deadline. And there's also a different experience in revisiting it. I interviewed Neil Gaiman, I guess, in 99, 98. maybe.
98.
98 maybe. And I remember he said, okay, that can't be right. Can't be 99. Doesn't matter. He said something about like how he could never revisit prose he'd written and enjoy it because he would always find the thing he should have done differently, the word he should have chosen differently. But that comics he could look at and actually appreciate and enjoy. And it was kind of at the time I thought he was nuts. Like I didn't understand what that meant. But now I totally get it because you're just kind of part of a team with comics, and there's collaborative. And so you can just admire the product. The I hate to say product. That sounds corporate and douchey. But the end result. Whereas with novels, I just remember the time spent. Like I can kind of enjoy short stories I've done. Mm-hmm. Novels just like, yep, that was several months of my life. That's a good line, but that was a lot of time. Yeah.
Very good. Our standard Beatles and Rolling Stones question: Batman or Superman?
Superman.
It's Superman. The answer is Superman. Yeah.
That's kind of a softball.
Yeah.
Yeah. And lastly, please, parting thoughts.
Any parting thoughts? Oh, I didn't answer your Bill and Ted question.
Oh, yeah.
I skipped the Bill and Ted question.
Oh my lord.
I don't know. So my parting thoughts were like, be excellent to each other. That's what Bill and Ted.
Really?
Yeah, it totally is. Comics are great. Those are my parting thoughts. My daughter last week, when I told her that she needed to read books that had just words and no pictures, yelled at me and she said, well, you've devoted your entire life to comics. And I said, I have devoted my entire life to comics, but you still have to be able to read books that don't have pictures in them. But, yeah,
I think that's
comics are awesome.
That's a great parting thought. I just want to take a quick second, wrap up. Chris Roberson, Allison Baker, thank you very much for scheduling time to sit with us at FablesCon today for Crime Spree's very first podcastable interview. I really appreciate the time.
Well, happy to do it.
Thank you very much.
You.
It was fun.
You guys did great.
Yay, team!
Turn it off.